All right, so we've added images into our login page here. So now let's go ahead and add the icons. Based on what I have in my sketch here, we're going to add 3 icons, one for the tutorial page, and then one for the email and password fields here. And then why don't we go ahead and just brush things up a little bit to help finish our login page here. So let's head back to Figma. Now, I want to show you one really cool resources for icons that you can get. There's a website called flaticon.com. I use it for a lot of my projects. As you can see here, they have almost 3 million vector icons that you can use in multiple formats, PNG, SVG, Photoshop. And this is great because they're completely free to use, although they do ask you to give credit to the artist. Now, they do have some pricing options where you can subscribe and not have to credit them, and you get access to a lot more icons as well. Cool. So using Flat Icon, I've downloaded some icons for the login page. So why don't we go ahead and find them in our resources for this project. Go into icons, and then you'll see the login page here. So they are in SVG format. Now you can definitely import PNG and JPEG icons into your project as well. Although it's not recommended because you don't get much control over, for example, the fill or being able to even make tweaks to the icons. The benefit of an SVG type of icon is that you can resize them without having to worry about the icons getting pixelated. Unlike a PNG icon, which is essentially rasterized, meaning that it has a standard width and height, and if you try to make an icon larger than that resolution, it will start to get pixelated. So I recommend using SVG, and that's what we're going to be doing for this project as well. So last lesson, we dragged images into our Figma. We can do the same thing here, but just for the sake of it, I'm going to show you another method that you can insert images as well, which is pretty neat. It works pretty good for icons as well. Now let's switch back into Figma here. You can also place images into your Figma files by going up here to the shape tools, and then you see there's place image, or alternatively you can hit Shift Command K or Shift Control K in Windows, and it will go ahead and open a file browser for you that you can use. So here I see I have my 3 icons, so why don't we go ahead and just select them all and then click open. Now the place image tool gives you a bunch of options. You can either go ahead and just place all, and it would place all the images here into my frame, or I can alternatively drag and place them as I go along. So I'll show you how that works. So feel free to do that by just dragging and again, hold shift to constrain the proportions. And then one neat thing you can do is actually hold space so that while you're placing your icon, you can actually move them around. So why don't we just put that here, and then let's go ahead and draw while holding shift again. So this one looks like it's a passport one, so it's going to go here, and we're going to resize and move these after. It's just to get an idea. Again, I'm going to hold shift and do the email one here as well, and just let go. And there you have it. Your 3 icons are now added, and so I think we're ready to go ahead and make some tweaks to both those icons as well as other stuff within our login page. So let's work from up here and go down. First thing, let's go and select our tutorial icon here, and then go ahead over here. You'll see there's no fill, but rather selection colors, and that's because when you have a group, which by default in SVG will be a group of vectors here inside your layers panel, that's why instead of a fill, it will show up as selection colors. It will do the same thing though. So go ahead and select that, and then give it a fill or a selection color of white. Let's go ahead and resize this to maybe 35 here. I think that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and add a guide. That's a horizontal guide here. You can do like 36. Just go ahead and place my image in the corner of there. That looks good. Now let's go down. Let's zoom in. Let's go ahead and double click into here. You might notice that when you have something grouped, you will have to double click into it to start changing elements inside of a group. So over here, I have my whole group, but if I want to change something with the email text, I have to double click into here and then select that email text. So I'm going to do that. Let's go ahead and resize this to 25. maybe even 22. Now this icon here is actually not part of the group yet. So to do that, go ahead and drag this icon for the email into the email group here. And so now I can actually go ahead and hold shift and select that together, and even the email background or the email text field, and then use the vertical align centers, and that will just go ahead and center everything for me. I'm going to change the text here to 14 and go ahead and change the color to a lighter color because that's a placeholder text, it's not the actual email. I'm going to use the color A4, A4, A4. So you can pop this code into your field here, and that will give you the same color if you want to use that. And then let's just finally space things properly here. Let's try to do 15 here. And then do 15 there. Or actually, let's do 10 there. That looks good. Let's do the same thing here. Let's first place this inside the password group. Make sure you put it inside the group and not outside. So to make sure that, for example, this layer is inside the group, there should be a little indentation here. If you miss it by accident, you can just go ahead and hover over on top of the group, and then it will definitely place it inside that group. Let's just double click in here, change this to 25 as well, or we had it 22. Let's go ahead and select everything here, center them, and just move this until we have the same as this. Apply a fill of A4, 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 and just move this so that it's matching with this position, the position of the email. Looks like I forgot to change my text to 14. And again, I'm gonna center that again, because when you do change the text size, it will change the vertical alignment. So make sure you always use the alignment tools to readjust things if they get moved around. Let's go in here. Let's change this to 14 as well. And then let's go down here. Let's go ahead and capitalize this or text over here. And to do that, go to the text section of your properties, click the three dots. And here you'll notice you have a bunch of different customizations you can make. We're just interested in the letter case here to make the case uppercase. And so now it's uppercase. Go ahead and change the fill to white. And then I'm going to select the two lines and actually bring the opacity down to, let's try 50%. We can even do something like 35. We want it to definitely be visible, but at the same time subtle. I think that's good. Maybe just bump text size of this to also 14. Stay consistent. Let's go ahead and select everything here and also do the align. That looks good. And then let's resize these to 14 and 14 here. Lastly, let's make sure that, again, we align things properly. I forgot to do this for some of the buttons, so go back in, just make sure everything is aligned vertically, and I think that looks good here. So if you go back to the sketch here, we're almost done. We just need a terms button over here or a terms section. So we're just gonna do a text instead of another button. So I think we already have too many buttons here. So let's go ahead and just press T, open a text here and write terms of service. Go ahead and change that to white here. And it looks like I completely messed up the casing here. So there we go, terms of service, and we can even do and privacy policy. That's typically what you see. To make certain parts of the text bold, just select the part that you want bold and then go ahead and use Command B as a shortcut, or you can actually access it from here as well and make it bold. Let's do the same thing here with terms of service. Make it bold. I think that looks good. Let's make sure it's centered. Okay, that's centered. And let's actually make sure we maintain a spacing of 36 from the bottom as well. So now, if I zoom out, you'll see we're almost done. Next lesson, we're going to come back and talk about colors and add some colors into here because as you can see, we don't have any colors except for the logo. So we'll try to use the logo color, which is an orange, to pick a nice color scheme for our app in the next lesson. All right, so let's jump into picking a color scheme for our app because as I mentioned at the very beginning of the section, the client hasn't specified a color scheme. So we're going to help them build one in this lesson and then learn a little bit more about color schemes and color styles in Figma. Cool. So included in the resources of this lesson will be a little text file that will give you a template that I put together for our color scheme. We're going to use that in just a second. Some good color reads, so go ahead and give these articles a read if you want to learn more about colors and how to apply them in your project. And this is also really cool. There's a bunch of color scheme resources. So all these websites help you build a color scheme for your project. I know I keep saying color scheme and you might not know exactly what a color scheme is, but essentially a color scheme is kind of like a palette, right? When you're an artist, you have a palette of different colors that you use in your design or in your art. So it's the same thing. There's only so many colors that we can use and that look good together. So that's what a color scheme is a bunch of colors that we can use for our project and we stick to them and create consistency with them and make sure that there's also contrast there so it looks good and it's legible and all of that. So let's go ahead and open this second resource here. I really like it. It will help us come up with a color scheme for our project. So I just opened it up here. It's called Colors Inspo. Essentially, it has a bunch of different color palettes or color schemes that you can use for your projects. There's some really nice ones in here, really crisp and sharp. And there's other ones that are kind of more light. So depending on the project that you're using, you can definitely get inspiration here or even use these same palettes in your projects. They have a bunch of other stuff, inspiration, freebies, brand colors if you want to see your favorite brand's color scheme, and even some really cool gradients as well. We're going to go back into the color palette tab. Let's go ahead and pick a color scheme that makes sense for our project. Since Clean Kangaroo has to do with cleaning, water, soap, those colors are usually associated with the color blue. Now I see in the project here, their logo is already orange. So blue and orange will go really well together. I guess a good example of that could be here where we have kind of a blue and orange. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this palette here, but then go ahead and add some custom colors to it as well. So let's go ahead and copy some of the colors. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and open this link that I told you about. So let's go ahead and open that link here. It should lead you right to this file where I've put together a color scheme template that you can use. It has access, you have access to those links here as well. So you can open that up. Right now we were just on the second website here. Really quickly, this is essentially your color palette that you're going to use for your project. We have a primary color, that's usually the brand color, a secondary color, and then two accent colors that we'll use but not as frequently as the secondary and primary colors. And then we can do a primary and secondary text colors as well. So for now, let's go ahead and just copy this over. Let's select everything here. Everything's already inside of a group, which is nice. While having this group selected, go ahead and hit Command C or Control C on Windows, and then head on over to your own project. I'm going to just paste it right on top of my login page for now, but later we'll organize this into another section. So I'm just going to move it right here for now. Let's just remove the template and the text here. And then let's go ahead and assign some colors to it. So first color I'm going to assign will probably be a color that I'll use as a secondary color. So let's go ahead and double click into here. Also, another way, if you have a group like this and you want to select an object inside of it without having to double click into it, you can just hold Command and then go ahead and select an object inside. That's a pretty neat way to select things instead of having to double click all the time. So now I have this selected. What I'm trying to do here is assign this kind of orange color, or I see it's kind of multiple orange colors. So we're going to use the color over here to fill this rectangle. The easiest way to do so is to hold Control C, and then you'll get a little color picker that you can even see on the top right corner of your screen, which will let you choose a fill. So let's go down here. Now you'll notice there's multiple oranges here that we can choose from. So let's go ahead and just go over here where the kangaroo's legs are and choose this orange. How cool is that? Another way that you can also add fill while using a color picker or an eyedrop picker is to open it up and then using this eyedrop tool from here as well. So let's go back to Colors Inspo, and I really like these shades of blue here. So I'm going to use this for the rest of my color palette. So let's do copy over here by just clicking on the blue, and then let's go over to the primary. Again, I have that selected using Command and then choose this rectangle. And over here, you'll see right next to your fill color, there's a little text that's essentially the hex code of that color. So right now it's white, and white has a hex code of 6Fs. So if you want to go ahead and replace this using Command V or Control V on Windows and press Enter, that will paste that color right in there for you. I'm going to actually change this text also just so that we can use it, and let's say there's a developer who wants to use this color. They know what hex code it represents. Let's do the same thing for the orange color. Let's just go ahead and copy this hex code to input into here. Let's go back to Colors Inspo, take this blue here maybe, and add it to this field right here, and also the text. And then lastly, I want to do a light color that we can use for maybe the background of certain parts of the app. Just double click into here again, and then change this as well. And there we have it. We have a nice color palette that we can use for our project. We will assign the primary text and secondary text colors later. But for now, let's just go ahead and focus on applying these colors. All right, so now that we've created our color scheme for our app, we want to go ahead and actually add these colors to what's called a color style, which lets us reuse the same colors throughout our project, so that we can easily change these colors if we decide to in the future and not have to change all the objects associated with that color. So let's go ahead and select the first color here. I'm going to hold Command here and click on it. Where it says fill, you're going to go over here to where there's the 4-dot icon over here called style. Go ahead and click on it, and then go ahead and create a style using the plus icon and name it primary. And then go ahead and create style. And now as you can see, I have this color style of blue. Let's add the rest of the colors here as well. I'm going to use Command click on this orange now. Go ahead to the style here, create style, secondary. Same thing for this accent color, create style, accent 1. I think you get the idea by now. Accent 2, and there you have it. I have this color scheme now in here. So now how do we apply that into our buttons? So let's go down to our login page. Let's go ahead and use Command and click on the background of this here. Otherwise, if you select the whole group, you will have to edit the color here in the selection colors. So both work. So let's go ahead and just actually choose the whole group, go down to the selection colors, and then from here you'll see styles. So go ahead and open the style, and there you have it. You have your styles here that you can use on that button. I think here I'm going to use the primary button. Let's go ahead and change the text color to white down here. And then let's go down to our next button over here, sign up with email. And then over here, again, let's select a style of primary. Same thing for the text, white. For the sign up with Google button, I'm going to go ahead and actually assign a fill of just white. And I think that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and apply the same style to our icons here. So go ahead and double click. Make sure you select the entire frame or the group here. And then go ahead and change the selection color using color style to the primary. Same thing for the email. Primary. Now this is where the magic happens. So now let's say all of a sudden you change your mind and you want to go with a purple color. You can simply choose one of the elements using that color style, head on over here, go ahead and click on it, and then choose edit style. And you can go ahead and now change this color. So let's make it maybe a purple color. And now as you can see, everything in the project using that color is changing. And you can imagine how cool that would be if I had multiple pages designed here. But even here within this one group, that's super cool. We can go ahead and just play around with this and change our primary color if we choose to. But I'm actually going to just do undo and go back to our main color here. And there we have it. That's color styles for you. I think we're pretty much done here. I'm just going to make a couple touches here to just improve this a little bit. Follow along if you like. Otherwise, in the next lesson, you can also download the Figma file that we have up until here and start with that. But let's go ahead here, and to improve it, let's just zoom in here. Bring this button down a little bit. Let's go ahead and increase the spacing between them to 5. And we actually forgot to add something here. There's usually a forgot password button. I'm going to add as a text, give it a color white, and change the thickness to bold. And let's just go ahead and place that over here. That looks good. I'm going to move this divider up a little bit until I have maybe a spacing of, let's try to do 55 pixels here. And then let's bump these up and try to get the same. I'm using Alt here again to see the spacing between different objects with the ones that I have selected. I think that's good. Let's add a little bit more spacing between these and make it 5 as well. Now let's zoom out, and I think that looks a lot cleaner now. Cool, so now we have a completed login page. I think it looks pretty nice. And I think now we're ready to start getting into our tutorial page and design that together. All right, so we have our login page now, and let's get into designing our tutorial page. Let's go back to my sketch just to see what we have over here. So I was thinking we should do a blur background of this screen right here. So when the user taps on the tutorial, it will just go ahead and blur the background of here. And then a little pop-up here with the title and the body text over here. And maybe a little vector that we can use to show that step. That would be pretty cool. So let's get started into designing that. So in this lesson, we're going to play around with effects to add kind of a background blur to this page and then build on top of that. So what we'll need to do is actually copy all the elements in here into our tutorial as well. And you'll see why in a second. So let's go ahead to our login frame here and actually go ahead and just select everything here. Go ahead and use Command C or Control C to copy. Head on over to your tutorial page and make sure you have the tutorial page selected, and then do Command V. And then go ahead and actually use Command G to group all of that together into one element. This way we just have a simple group over here. I'm going to lock it so I don't accidentally move things around. And now go ahead and create a rectangle by pressing the R tool from the top corner over here all the way down to the bottom. So once you have that rectangle here, let's go ahead and change the fill to black. And then let's change the opacity to, let's do, I think 55% looks good. So now go over to effects, create a new effect by pressing the plus sign here. And then click the drop shadow and change that to a background blur. So now, as you can see, it adds a nice background blur to my rectangle here. And so what that does is that it blurs everything underneath it because this layer is on top of the whole group that we created from essentially this page here. That just went ahead and blurred everything underneath that rectangle. If you place things on top of this rectangle, it won't be blurred, which is what we want. You can tweak the blurriness of your background blur by clicking this icon over here and changing the number here. So right now it's 4, but we can do 10 or we can do 15 if you want more blur. I think for us, I'm going to do 8 for now. I think 8 would work, or even 6. Now let's go ahead and create a rectangle for the background of my tutorial. Press R. Let's drag one. I think based on my sketch, something like this would look good. Just let go over there. Use the align tool here to make sure it's centered. Let's change the fill color to white. Let's go ahead and round the borders to, let's do 25 pixels. I think that looks good. And now we need 2 texts in here, one for the title. So let's do T and type in title. Why don't we set the font here to 22? Let's go ahead and just select both of these and use the alignment tool. Let's go ahead and just duplicate this text holding Alt and do body here. And let's go ahead and change the bold to a regular and a font size of 14. Now you'll notice that if I start typing here, let's just type something random in here, the text will keep going on and on and on, which is not what we want for our tutorial. For our tutorial, we want a little paragraph type of text here. So this is where your text bounding box comes into place. If you resize your text here, now you can choose what the width of it will be. And then now you can go ahead and just center that here. Just to, again, make sure all these are centered together. And now if I add more text into here, it will be bound by that box. So in our resources, we have this app notes.txt. Go ahead and open that up. And you'll notice that we have tutorial steps in here. So the first steps text is over here. So let's go ahead and just copy that over into here. That looks a little bit better. Let's go ahead and just resize that. And again, make sure it's centered. Let's go ahead and do an align center for the text. I think we can do a font size of 16 here to make it look a little bit better. And for the title, let's go ahead and just set it to browse. Let's go ahead and actually group this whole thing together by selecting everything here, Command G. Make sure it's centered again. Let's go ahead and bring these a little bit down. And let's go ahead and add another rectangle for our button here. Let's do 55 for the height. And I think that looks good. I just want to make sure that this also matches the width of my button. I'm going to change my button fill to, by using styles, I'm going to change the button background to the blue. And now let's go ahead and add a border radius of 8 here. And then go ahead and add a text inside for next. Change the color to white. And just go ahead and center these together, group them together. And let's just go inside here and center the text here. That looks good. Now let's go ahead and add some vector icons. So again, in the resources, if you go to icons and go into tutorial here, you'll see we have 3 vectors that we can use for our steps. So let's go ahead and actually just drag them all into my Figma file here. If I go back, Figma's placed them all side by side, which is cool. But let's go ahead and first resize that because they're huge. Let's go back in here. I think we can do a little bit bigger than that. Let's just go ahead and move these ones out of the way for now. Now keep in mind, vector icons like SVGs show up as frames in your project. So make sure you treat it as a frame when you're moving around. So let's go ahead and find this frame for this icon here and actually drag it inside of our group here. So if I scroll down, I'll see tutorial, and then this is our group. Let's just place that inside of here, and then while holding shift, I'm gonna center both of them. I'm gonna make sure that, and I think we can add a little bit more spacing to our text here, and I think that's starting to look good. So why don't we go ahead and actually add styling to the icon here by choosing our color styles and maybe choosing the secondary option. And then for our title or the text over here, changing this to the blue maybe. I think we can even make this a little bit bigger. Let's try 24, and then go ahead and select these two together to center them. And make sure everything here is centered as well. And it looks like it is. So there you have it. That's our tutorial. To create the last two steps, why don't we go ahead and select this whole frame here and do Command D twice to duplicate it twice. And then let's just zoom out, select these two frames, and just move them right underneath. And doing the same thing over here. So then let's go ahead and rename this one to tutorial step 2. Rename this one to tutorial step 3. And then of course, let's do tutorial step 1. Now we're gonna go ahead and just quickly change the content in here. So let's do 2. Let's go back to our text file here, and it looks like this one's about request. Paste that text into here, and then let's go ahead and use Command X or Control X on Windows to cut that icon out of there, and to replace it with this one, I'm just going to click where it is and then go ahead and just paste right there using Command V or Control V. Now it looks like it did put this inside of the frame of the other one, so let's go ahead and drag it outside of the frame of the other icon and then delete the other icon. Now we still do want to apply the orange fill, and that looks good for our step 2. Next one is our step 3. Go back here again, rename this one to clean clothes. Go ahead and paste that in here. Let's select everything and the text here and just center that along. And then of course, let's go to our last vector here and using Command X again. Paste that into here, and then just making sure that's outside of this. Deleting the shop vector and then changing the style to orange. Let's go ahead and change the text here to done because at this point the users completed the tutorial, so they're going to be done with the tutorial. So there we have it. That's our tutorial, step 1, step 2, and even step 3. All right, so in this lesson, we're going to talk about something very useful in Figma called components. So far in our tutorial pages, we've created multiple cards essentially for each step of the tutorial, right? As the user goes through from step number 1 all the way through step number 3. They'll view this little tutorial card from where they can get their information about how the app works. Now, let's say I realize that I want to go ahead and change the roundedness of this background over here. So, of course, you can go over here and let's say from 25, we can set that to 15. But now watch what happens. Our tutorial step number 2 and step number 3 still have a corner radius of 25. That's because there's really no relation between each of these cards here. But what components allow us to do is to actually go ahead and create one instance of these cards, or really anything that's going to have a very similar style or really similar configuration, just like we do here, right? Even though the text for every card is different, but generally we have a lot more going on here in terms of styling or how the elements are placed. And unless we go and make that change to each screen individually, we won't be able to get it otherwise. So that's where components come into play. I'm going to go ahead and undo that border radius here, just to make sure it's 25 again. There we go. And now we're going to convert this into a component, and then you'll see how it's useful. So again, components can be any part of the design that you want to duplicate while maintaining a certain style or certain characteristic, so that if at any point you decide to change that, or change the style, change the characteristics of that component, you can do so in one place and not have to do it in multiple places. If you watched the lesson where we did the color styles, it's very similar to color styles where if you just make that one change here, all of our buttons and elements using that color style will change instead of us having to go in one by one and changing them. So let's go ahead and jump in and actually make a component. So let's start with the card over here on tutorial step number 1. If you haven't been following along, be sure to go to the resources folder here, which you can get again from the beginning of this section, and then go into mockups and find the lesson that you're on, and you can go ahead and open the file and continue along with us. Otherwise, let's jump in. I'm just going to go ahead and zoom into here. Let's go ahead and select this group. And as you might remember, that group contains the text here, the little title, as well as the background. Now, I just noticed that my button and my icon here, my vector here aren't properly inside of the group. So let's go ahead over here to the layers panel and just go ahead and firstly, let's group the next button together, the rectangle as well as the text, using Command G. Let's name this next button. And then we have the vector here. So let's go ahead and just select these two. For some reason, they've been grouped together, but we want to actually go ahead and just separate them and put them in this group. There we go. And now we have everything in one group. I'm just going to go ahead and reorder a couple of things. Bring this browse all the way up here. Bring this up here, just so that they're in kind of a nice order from top to bottom. I think that looks good. So now let's go ahead and select the whole group all together. Make sure you have the group selected with every element inside. Go all the way up here where it says create component. Alternatively, you can do Option Command K or Alt Control K, and that will do the same thing. And so now you'll see on my layers panel, this group all of a sudden has a new icon, and even the text is purple. And so that's telling us that this is now a component. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and hold Alt and go ahead and drag another copy into this page, the tutorial step number 2 page. Now, because I've created my component from this group here, this is now my master component. What I've done now is I've gone ahead and created an instance from that master component, meaning that this group here now belongs to the properties and the styling and everything here. So let's head on over to our tutorial step 2 page. I'm just going to go ahead and bring this outside. This is the card that was originally on here. I'm going to bring this out as well. Just going to reorder that so it's on top. Okay, so now what we want to do is insert this text. So go into here, Control C to copy, paste that in there. Same thing for the text down here. Now for the image here, I'm going to do something different because this is now an instance of that master component. I can't go ahead and just bring elements inside of here, but I can definitely add stuff here and then choose to hide or unhide the things that I want to show in each instance of it. So let's go ahead and double click into here to get our vector icon over here. I'm just going to do copy. Let's go up here to our master component here and just paste that in. And now I'm just going to go ahead and make sure I align it with my other icon here. There we go. Let's go all the way down and do the same thing with this icon here using Command C. Go go up here and then let's go ahead and paste that in there. And it looks like I've accidentally inserted them into the other vectors frames. So make sure that you have your frames independent of each other for the icons here. And so now what we can do here, let's go ahead and just get rid of this since we're done with it, and just center this along. I think that's centered. Let's go ahead and also center along the master component on this page. Or you can just go over here and press the horizontal and vertical centers, and that will do the same thing. And let's go ahead and copy this. Go ahead and select this tutorial page. But before we paste it in here, let's go ahead and let's just drag this out of here and drag these as well. I group things a little bit weirdly in my tutorial card. So let's go ahead and select our tutorial step 3 and then go ahead and paste. And so now we have another one. Let's go ahead and copy the text here into here, and this one into here. And you'll notice this one's not centered. So first let's go ahead and delete this group here and go all the way up to our master component here. And what we're going to do is just go ahead and stretch that text all the way through to match our body text, and then go ahead and click text align center. So now if I go down here, that should look good. Now, what about the icons over here? Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to double click into here. Remember, although this is an instance of a component, you still have control over some of the things, such as what you show and what you hide in here. Go ahead and select this group and go to where we have towels, we have washing machine, and we have the shop icon. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the shop icon and the washing machine. So we just have the towels here, the clean towels. Let's go up here, double click into here and do the exact same thing. In this one though, let's go ahead and hide the towel, the shop, and then we just have the washing machine. And last but not least, up here. Now, one thing I do want to mention for this card here, because this is the master component, if I make any change to it, even if I hide those extra icons in here, it will actually go ahead and remove it from my other pages as well. So that's not what we want here. Typically, when you create components, you want to go ahead and place your components in a separate place, somewhere different, somewhere separate, so that you can reuse it and edit it from somewhere else. So why don't we go ahead and drag this outside and just place it here for now. And I know it looks a little bit unorganized. In the next lesson, we're going to come back and clean that up. But for now, let's go ahead and press Command C, select our tutorial frame here and do Command V. And so now I have another instance of that master component. Now if I go in here and then hide my towels and my washing machine, I just have my shop icon, which is exactly what we want. So why did we just do that there? I know we got exactly the same result as before. Now let me explain what's different. If you go up to your master component here, and you can identify a master component from their instances by actually looking at the symbol here. A master component has this little diamond icon right beside the name. And if I go down here, since this is an instance of that master component, I can see it doesn't have that 4 small diamond icon. It just has one empty one. So that tells me that this is an instance of that master component. So now if I go up here and double click into my master component until I select this rectangle here, now let's say I want to change my roundedness to 0, just as an example here. Now if I go down here to my step number 1, you see it has a corner radius of 0. Same thing for step number 2, and same thing for step number 3. That's pretty cool, right? Now if I go back here and use Command click onto my background and give it a border radius of 20, The same thing will be applied to all the other instances. Let's say I've decided now to actually align all my text to the left here. So if I select my text and do align left in here, just going to make sure these have the same size. Okay, that's good. I'm just going to select them and make sure they're centered as well. And it looks like they are. So now if I go down here, you'll see my text has changed throughout all my instances. And how cool is that? Instead of having to make a change on all my groups here, now I'm just making a change to the master component there. So now I'm just going to go ahead and select both text here and center them again. And now if I zoom out, you'll see the changes have been made here as well. So let's go ahead and also rename this group 2 to say tutorial card, just so that we know exactly what this master component represents. So now if I go down here, and let's say for some reason in my step 1 or my step 1 frame here, I want to go ahead and use this as a completely separate group with no relation to that master component, although that's where we got it from. But let's say you want to go ahead and completely get rid of that relation there. So all you have to do is just go over to the properties panel here, and then where it says tutorial card, go ahead and select that, and then you can go ahead and select detach instance. And so this is now a separate group, or actually even a separate frame. If I go to my layers panel, you see now it doesn't have the same icon that it had before here. So now if I just go ahead and jump in here and let's just say move these around, and let's say delete this icon here, this will have no relation to the master component nor any of the other instances. So this is now completely separate, and whatever we do to it will just remain on this page and within this frame alone. So now I'm just going to go ahead and hit Command Z a bunch of times to go back to having it as an instance. And you can see now it's an instance again because it has a little purple border, as well as on my layers panel it says tutorial card, and it has a little icon that we had before. So now I know this is an instance of that component. So feel free to take advantage of components wherever you can. Whenever you see you have multiple objects that are related or look the same, you probably can put it in a master component. And so now I want to give you a little exercise to actually go ahead and put our buttons in a separate component as well. And the reason is, as you've noticed, a lot of the buttons that we're using actually have very similar styling. And again, if I decide to change the login button here to be bold, my other buttons will not use that property because I'm only changing my login button here. But typically we want our buttons to look the same or very similar with just small adjustments such as the background color or the text color. So feel free to do this exercise and create a master component from your buttons and maybe place them outside of your design over here. And then go ahead and create instances wherever you see we have that button used. One thing I do want to mention before you jump into that exercise is that once you create a master component here, be sure to make an instance and put it into here instead of your separate cards, because again, this is a component, this is an instance of that component. So whatever change you want to make here, especially in terms of what you want to add or remove to this whole group here, you'd want to do it inside of the master component. If you don't want to do this exercise, feel free to skip it and then just jump into the next video where we're going to actually do it together and learn a little bit more about components because they're super powerful.